Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the new day, the new week, new opportunity you got here in front of you. We see the topic here today, which is how to lose friends and alienate people. I'm going to explain why this is the subject, why I'm coming at it from this angle. Then I'm going to tell you some of the communication faux pas that you may be committing that is hurting your chances of building relationships, making connections, and of course, maintaining and extending and going deeper into relationships with other people. And the reason why this matters is because we are in the collaboration era. This is the era of collaboration, meaning the people who are going to move forward the fastest these days are those who are able to connect with and leverage others, as well as allowing yourself to be leveraged by others. So the better you do at connecting with other people, the better you're going to do, period, in the era that we're in right now. That's the world that we're in right now today. So these are really what these are going to be, are communication mistakes that people are routinely making, and you may not even realize that you're making those mistakes. Yellow Man Reed, I appreciate you for the, they even got a little sound. Appreciate you for the lightning bolts. Appreciate you, sir. So we've already talked about many times. I don't know why these sound effects are coming on. I didn't hear these before. I don't know why this is coming on. But anyway, I appreciate it, Yellow Man Reed, for the sound effects. So let me turn my volume down. So since we talked about communication skills and the things that make communication work well for you, what we're going to talk about here today are the things that cause communication to fail for you and where you may be messing up in communication, because it's important that we not only know the things that we want to do that will help us do better, but we also want to be aware of the things that we may be doing, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident, that are actually hurting our chances. So the better we're aware of it, the more we can catch it, and we can make sure we don't come up short and shoot ourselves in the foot with these failures in communication. So everything I'm going to share here today, I think I got 6 points that I'm going to share. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 things I'm going to share. You just want to make sure you're not making these mistakes. Okay, so these are mistakes you want to make sure you don't make. These are not things to do. These are things not to do. For those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 35 books on 4 TEDx talks. I created this brand called Work on Your Game. Our job here is to help you perform at your highest level consistently and to produce results. That's it. Perform at your highest level consistently and produce results. That's the game we're in. We're in a performance and results-based business. Again, my background is in sports, and in sports is all about your performance and the result. That's it. Not about the opinions, not about how anybody feels. I'm not saying you may not feel good in the process, but if you don't, but you still get the result, then that means we won. So we're in a performance and results-based business. And any of you who's interested in that, your next step is coming into our university, which we call Work on Your Game University. That link is in the bio on whatever platform you are watching me on right now. I'll talk about that a little bit later as we get to the end. And I will address all questions and comments at the end. So if you have a question or comment that you post while I am speaking, I will address them after I'm done. After I've done my points, or if you want to hold it until I get done my points, you can post it then as well. But I take everything in the order in which it comes. So if you post something now, that'll be the first thing that I'll respond to after I'm done my points. Point number 1, we're talking here today, how to lose friends and alienate people. In other words, these are mistakes that you should not make in your communications. And again, I'll address all questions and comments at the end. Number 1 is failing to listen. This is a simple one. Failing to listen. All right, this is how you can lose friends and alienate people. This is a communication mistake. Many times when you hear the word communication, first thing most of us think about is speaking. You think about communication, you think about doing something like what I'm doing right now, speaking to an individual person, speaking to an audience, maybe writing something down. Those are basically the forms of communication we have. Of course, we have your nonverbal communication, but also half of communication, folks, is listening, is what you take in, not just what you put out, is what you take in. That is part of communication. Many people seem to not understand that listening is part of communication, and many people are really bad at listening. So here's where your opportunity is. If you can be a good listener, you will separate yourself from most people, because most people don't listen. Most people pause and give you a chance to say what you want to say, only so that they can gather what they want to say next. They're not actually listening to what you're saying. So good interviewers, for example, tend to be very good listeners. So Oprah Winfrey is a great interviewer. And the reason she's a great interviewer is not because she has the most provocative questions, but because she is a very good listener. So any of you who listens to, let's say these days, I guess it would be podcasts or radio shows, people who do really good interviews. The reason they do good interviews is not because they have great guests necessarily, because the guests could actually be trash. But if you ask the right questions and you listen really well, people tend to talk a little bit more and they tend to open up a lot more. So Oprah Winfrey is a good example of a great interviewer. Larry King, I believe he's passed away. He was a great interviewer. Tim Ferriss is someone some of you may know from the podcast space. He's a great interviewer. Joe Rogan, also a great interviewer. And there are others. I'm just throwing out a couple who I'm thinking of right now. Understand, folks, that listening does not mean that you simply regurgitate what someone else says or you copy paste their words back to them like a court stenographer. Listening means you can understand where another person is coming from, even if their verbiage is not so perfect. That's what listening is about. When you're a really good listener, what you're doing is you're able to. TikTok is asking me if I want to set up a new goal. Okay, so I'm going to set up a new goal. I don't even know what this means, but I'll try it out. All right, so my point, as I continue here on my point, we tried a new goal on TikTok. I don't know what that means or what it's going to do, but we'll see. Listening is about picking up on what someone is trying to communicate, even if they're not perfect at communicating it. In other words, if you have a 5 or 6 year old child and they're trying to say something to you, they may not be perfect in putting it into words because they're only 5 or 6 years old, but you still give them the benefit of the doubt and you understand their angle and you understand the spirit of what they're saying, even if they may not be perfect at giving you the letter of what they're saying, right? So if you want to win friends and influence people, you need to start treating other people the exact same way. Now, if you want to lose a friend and you want to alienate a person, then you can basically be like a lawyer in court and you can prosecute them on every single word that they say, which is a mistake that many people make when they're not trying to do this. This often happens when people are disagreeing on a subject. So you take, for example, people are talking about some social topic that people tend to disagree on, whether it's something that has to do with gender, something that has to do with race, something that has to do with some hot topic, politics, etc. People tend to try to prosecute each other by breaking down the detail of every single word that another person says. When you're really trying to understand a person and be friends with them and get along with them, you don't do that to people. So if you want to make more friends, don't do that. All right, so any of you who has that habit or you have that ability, use it selectively and know when not to use it. So active listening is what we call this. And active listening is a soft skill, meaning it's not something that you can measure or count. It's not something that a computer can do. It's something that is a human ability that will never be replaced by artificial intelligence. So the better you are at it, the more you future-proof yourself and your ability to do what you do. Because again, a computer cannot do this. And I'm not going to say never, but it'd be a long time before a computer has this type of human skill. And that's why you need it. Okay, so this first one is failing to listen. This is an anti-communication skill. You should make sure you are not committing this mistake. Number 2, going right into what I just talked about in point number 1. We're talking here today about mistakes in communication that cause you to lose friends and alienate people. Number 2, getting into semantic battles. Thank you for whoever helped me reach that goal. I think it was Yellow Man Reed again. Thank you again, 2 for 2. Getting into battles of semantics over directional meaning. What does this mean? Battles of semantics means you are dissecting what someone else says word for word, rather than understanding the direction of what they're trying to say. You're going into the detail of what they specifically said. Now, again, you can use this if you are arguing with someone or debating with them, or you're trying to make somebody look bad, then by all means, just break down the semantics and the details of every single word that they said and try to make them look bad or stupid or foolish if you're trying to, quote unquote, win the conversation. If, on the other hand, and I'm going to assume most of you are in this situation, you're trying to get along with someone, you're trying to understand someone, you're trying to get them to know you, like you, trust you, and be willing to listen to you the same way that you're listening to them, give them the benefit of the doubt and understand the direction of what they're saying, even if they're not so precise in the verbiage, the semantics of what they're saying. Again, use the example of if you have a child who's under the age of 10, they may not be so clear in communicating to you, but you give them the benefit of the doubt with every single thing that they say, and you will keep listening to them and keep trying to understand what they're trying to say, even if they're failing to get their point across to you. And you'll keep asking them, what are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying? Until you understand it. Why? Because you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. You want them to believe that you're listening. My son yesterday, I was on the elevator in my building. We got off at the floor that has the exercise facility, and I'm carrying him, and he started saying something. I couldn't really understand what he was saying. And what he was saying was, we're going to the gym, but he can't quite make that G sound yet. So it sounded like he was saying something else. I couldn't understand. He kept saying it. And then I finally realized what he was saying. We're trying to go to the gym. Now, if I was trying to make him look bad, I can make fun of the fact that he didn't pronounce the word properly. But again, if I'm trying to understand him and I want him to understand that I understand him and that I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Same thing you need to do. Again, we're not in court. So if you happen to be a trial lawyer, then you use this when you're in court. But when you get out of court, you can't do this with your husband or wife. That's not going to help the relationship. Can't do it with your kids. Can't do it with your friends. If you do these things, again, people are not going to want to listen to you, and they're not going to want to talk to you, and they won't listen to you. So this is this skill of giving grace to other people when you're communicating with them. Again, especially when you're trying to build rapport, establish connection, and get cooperation. So those of you who are in sales, you got to be really good at this, because when you're in sales, especially when you're selling high ticket items, it is your job to find out what the other person needs. And other people may not be as clear and smooth in communicating. In other words, the outward communication as you are. Some people can't sit and just talk and explain exactly what they want to say off the cuff, extemporaneously, as well as others. But you're still trying to get cooperation from that person, even though they may not be that good at speaking. You got to figure out what they're trying to say, even if they can't say it. You got to pull that out of them. And the more you are willing to listen to another person and they feel like you are listening, the more likely they will keep trying to get their point across to you, and the better chances you have of understanding, again, where they're trying to go, even if they ain't that good at getting there. Everybody get what I'm saying here? So this is your job, listener. This is your job, communicator. A strong communicator has the ability to do this. So do not put so actually, I'm going to give you 2 points here. Number one, when you are communicating, I'm going to put it on you as your responsibility to make sure that you communicate what you want to say so clearly that nobody can misconstrue what you're saying. At the same time, when you are listening, even if someone else is not as good as you, they're like 10% as good as you need to figure out what they're trying to say, even if they are, again, poorly getting their point across. Again, so don't try to go into small details with people when you're trying to get along with them, okay? Use this as, if you want to make somebody look bad, then use it. But if you're not trying to make someone look bad, you're trying to make a friend, all right, don't make this mistake. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is communication mistakes. Things that you may be doing that is causing you to lose friends, and alienate people. Number 3, asking for a point and then moving the goalposts. So moving the goalposts is a common logical fallacy, is a common argumentation technique that people use, again, when you're trying to run circles around a person and make them look bad, or for whatever reason you are opposing this individual. So, for example, in a political debate, you will see people do this. And people are arguing, you'll see people do this. This is usually something people do when they're just trying to be right rather than having productive discourse. There's a difference between being right and being accurate. Being right is about my opinion beats your opinion. Being accurate is about, here's the outcome we're looking to achieve and what is going to get us to the outcome. Accuracy is objective. Being right is subjective. And when people are arguing with each other, they're usually being subjective, not objective. So this, again, has become a more common tactic these days, especially with the internet, and especially when people are strongly opposed to each other on certain topics. Again, politics, religion, any type of social issue, this happens all the time. So somebody will say something, or they'll ask something, or they'll change the argument just to make themselves right and to make the opposition wrong. Again, what's the outcome here? What's the goal? So when I talk about being right versus being accurate, when you're trying to be right, all you're focusing on is making the other person wrong and making yourself the quote unquote winner in the conversation. When you're focused on accuracy, you're asking yourself, what's the goal? See, rightness is about your ego. Accuracy is about the outcome. And if you're trying to achieve an outcome, such as, let's say you're a salesperson and you're trying to make a sale, it doesn't matter what your ego does. You got to put your ego aside or completely put it away in order to make the sale. You should focus on making the sale. Why? Because you're in the business of selling things. You're a salesperson. So the accuracy is about what is going to get me the sale, not what serves my ego. Even if the customer says something, or your prospect says something that's completely wrong, like is 100% wrong, you probably are not going to go into an argument with them about why they're wrong, because you understand that if you prove them wrong, you might also lose the sale at the same time. All right, that's a pyrrhic victory. You don't want that victory. All right, you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. But on the other hand, you're a salesperson, you want to make the sale. Your prospect may say something that is completely factually incorrect, and it's completely incorrect. You won't even go into it and argue with them about why they're incorrect. Why? Because you're trying to keep them on your side so you can make a sale. All right. So again, let's focus on accuracy, not on ego, and not on trying to be right. Again, if the goal is to get along with another person. So it can't serve your ego in a moment to prove another person wrong. All right. Get on social media and get into the comment section, and you'll see people doing this all the time, right? Any of you who engages in commentary on social media, you probably see it all the time. But does it help your situation? Does it move you forward? Okay, so you asking another person because you're looking to learn, or you ask another person because you're trying to prove yourself right. And when people are trying to prove themselves right, that's when arguments start. When people are trying to get to accuracy, there may be a back and forth, but if everyone agrees on what the goal is, then everyone can get on the same page. Moving on to point number 4. We're talking here today about how to lose friends and alienate people. In other words, the communication mistakes that you may be making that is causing you to hurt your relationships or your potential relationships, maybe without you even knowing. Maybe you do know, and you just need to brush up on this. Number 4, sarcasm and insults. You must be very careful with sarcasm and with insults that you can use either as deflections or you use as direct attacks. You have to be very careful with these because these often happen when, let's say, you make a salient point, you make a solid point in a conversation, and either the person you're talking to or some random person in the discussion, such as on social media, they reach for any tool with which to invalidate you because they really disagree with the position that you have, but the point that you made was actually good. So they're going to try to come with some type of sarcasm about you or sarcasm about your point, or they'll just come and insult you, which we call ad hominem. Ad hominem is when somebody makes a point and then another person jumps in and they attack who you are as a person rather than addressing the actual point that you made. That's called ad hominem. And people tend to do that often when they are talking on the subject in which they're very emotionally engaged. So for example, in politics, if somebody comes out and they're supporting the Republican candidate, another person hates the Republican candidate, they'll come out and attack you as a person rather than actually addressing anything that you said. You may be talking about a policy procedure that you agree with, and this is why you like the Republican, and they come in and start trashing either the person who's the Republican, or they start trashing you, or they come with some kind of sarcastic point that has nothing to do with what you just said. And again, people tend to do this when they get emotionally engaged on a subject, or they already are emotionally engaged on a subject. So one thing is you got to watch out for you doing this, because everyone who's listening to this, you probably have some topics in which you are highly emotionally engaged and that you have no tolerance for anyone who thinks differently than how you think. And it doesn't make you wrong, it just makes you human. But you need to be very careful that you don't start throwing out sarcasm and insults at people who disagree with you, because people have a right to have whatever opinion that they want, even if you disagree with that opinion, even if you think they came to their opinion through some faulty logic or faulty reasoning, or maybe no logic and no reasoning. And again, there are topics, politics is a good example, where people do think that. If you don't think that this candidate is better than that candidate, you obviously are stupid, dumb, you have no logic, you have no reason, you're a complete idiot, and you are all for some terrible thing, calamities happening to everybody in the country. There are people who do honestly, wholeheartedly believe that. I will say to those people, even though you believe that, you must also respect the right of other people to have a differing opinion, and also give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they do have some logical reasons for why they believe it. It can't just be, and I'm going to make sure all of you hear this, it cannot just be that people who oppose you are just all stupid and everyone who's on your side are all geniuses. That's not possible. That's not what's happening. And everybody needs to hear that point, especially in the context of when I'm doing this. Those of you may be watching on recording, we got a political election coming up in less than a month. And there are people on one side who will look at people on the other side, not everybody, but some people on one side look at the people on the other side and say, anyone who's on that side, you must be a complete idiot, a complete fool. You have no logic. You have no reasoning skills. You have no intelligence whatsoever. You're just a dummy. That's the only reason you can have a different opinion from me. And there are people on the other side who have the exact same view. And I'm telling all of them that this is not possible. I'm not even telling you whether you're right or wrong. I'm telling you it's not possible. Not possible that everybody who agrees with you is smart and everyone who disagrees with you is an idiot. Maybe you're the idiot. It's possible. Maybe they are idiots, but that's not because they have a different opinion from you. So again, this is just having a little bit of personal humility, even when disagreeing with another person, and be very careful with the sarcasm. All right, be very careful with the sarcasm, very careful with the insults, because as soon as you take a conversation to that level, then it'd be very difficult to bring it back to the logic, depending on who you're talking to. There are some people who are kind of immune to this stuff. You can throw a bunch of sarcasm and insults at them, and they generally won't go to the low road with you. Excuse me, but in my experience, most people will join you on the low road if you take the low road. All right, so you got the high road, you got the low road. As soon as you go to the low road and you start using sarcasm and insults at another person because you disagree with them, they will join you down there, and now y'all are just basically fighting your egos. But the point never gets addressed because somebody took it there, the other person joined you there, and now we have no discussion and no conversation. If you're actually trying to get a resolution, then your job, I'm putting this on you who's listening to me, make sure you don't go there. If the other person goes there, you can ignore them. You can bring the conversation back to where it needs to be. This requires you to have thick skin. So any of you who's going to get involved in conversation, especially on the internet, when you're talking to nameless, faceless, anonymous people who can basically say things that they would never say to you in real life, you have to have thick enough skin to not take the bait when someone else tries to throw, again, some type of insult at you, sarcasm at you, or try to get a group of people to disagree with you. And I use an app called X. Some of y'all are familiar with it. It used to be called Twitter. That's the only place where I engage in commentary. So if y'all follow me on most of these apps, you never see my name in anybody's comments because I don't comment on anybody's stuff. I'll respond to my own comments, not even all the time, but I will engage in commentary with other people on X. And over there, people, especially if you jump in a conversation in which you're disagreeing with whatever the main point is, then a bunch of people will come in and try to pile on and attack you and insult, sarcasm, all of this stuff, just because they don't agree with what you said, not because they have an actual point to go against you. Most of the time, they don't. So what I'm telling you is you need to be careful of this. And if you happen to come into the line of fire of people who disagree with you, you had to have thick enough skin, or just ignore them if you want to, whatever you want to do, to not take the bait. Because once people's egos get involved in the conversation, it's hard to get out. All right. Any of you who's ever been in an argument before, all of you have, you know how hard it is to extricate yourself from an argument once you're in it. So your job is to notice when someone's trying to bait you into an argument and make sure you don't take the bait, unless you want to argue. If you want to argue, I guess you can do it. Moving on to point number 5. We're talking here today about how to lose friends and alienate people. Common communication mistakes that people are making. Number 5, unwillingness to acknowledge a solid point. And I'm going to answer all questions and comments at the end, by the way. Unwillingness to acknowledge a solid point. Okay, I guess I'm going to create a new goal here on TikTok and see what happens. What does this mean? This means, first of all, let me tell you this. This skill alone can diffuse about 87% of arguments and disagreement. All right. If you want to avoid argument and disagreement, you need to develop this skill right here. Your willingness and ability to acknowledge when someone else makes a solid point. Even if you are generally disagreeing with their position, you can agree that they made a good point. And I find, again, on the internet, especially on hot topic issues where people have very strong opinions, that very rarely can someone acknowledge it. People just don't do it. And I use an app called X, where it's basically the town square of the internet, where people just come on there to talk about current events and what's happening and share their opinions. And I see people who are well-known people. These are people with verified blue checks with a whole bunch of followers, people who've written books, people who are college professors, people who are entrepreneurs, people who run businesses, people who are leaders in their particular spaces, in communities and businesses, professionally, etc. And I see them going back and forth on a topic. And very rarely do I see anybody say, you know what, I disagree with you generally, but the point that you just made there, that's a good point. But in addition to that good point that you made, how about this point? Very rarely do I see people do that. There's just courteous discourse has pretty much gone away. And at least in the United States, courteous discourse is going away, and that has gone away. And it's not because of any one individual person. I know some people try to say, well, that's because of Donald Trump. Courteous discourse went away. I disagree. I believe that the reason courteous discourse has gone away is if I'm going to blame any entity, much more than I would blame Donald Trump, I blame social media, because social media allows for anonymity, where people can just talk crazy on the internet, even if you're not anonymous. Like, I could just talk crazy to one of you, and what's the chance of any of us ever meeting in person and you knowing that it's me? Very small. So even minus the anonymity, it's just the distance between you and a person that you're talking to, just because you're doing it through a phone or a computer. What's the chance you're going to actually run into that person in real life and they're going to recognize you and you're going to recognize them? Is very small. So people talk crazy, and you get this, again, courteous discourse has gone out the window. And those of you who are old enough to have been alive, let's say you're over the age of 30, 35, and you grew up, at least partially grew up in an era before we had social media and you could do all your communication through a phone. We had to communicate with people face to face. So if you had to say something, if you had something to say to somebody, you had to say it to them in real life, in the flesh, physically in front of them, or you knew you would run into them at some point, even if you said something crazy through the internet or on a phone or a text message, you knew you eventually see that person, and people controlled their tone. They controlled their words a lot more. So there's a Chris Rock special on Netflix. I can't remember which one it was. It was before the Will Smith slap thing. It was one of those specials Chris Rock did, and he was talking about that. He said everybody needs to experience getting punched in the face, because when you get punched in the face, you learn how to control your words, or you learn tone, or you learn how to talk to certain people and how not to talk to certain people, because you know what will happen if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person. And see, that's getting stripped away because of the internet. People just say anything, and there's no accountability. There's no accountability for talking crazy on the internet, even if your real name and your real picture is with your profile. Because again, you're in New York and they're in Dallas. What's the chance you're ever going to run into this person? And even if you did, how would they know it was you, and how would you know it was them? It's very unlikely. So this skill alone, number 5, willingness to acknowledge when someone else makes a good point. If you would like to possibly like to have the ability to move someone from opposing you to agreeing with you, you have to have the ability to agree with them. You want to move someone to your side, you have to have the ability to acknowledge when they have actually made a useful point. Now, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you did this in a conversation? You and another person were disagreeing, but they said something, you said, all right, that's a good point. When's the last time you did that? When's the last time you had someone do it to you? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often. And the reason it doesn't happen is because people are more focused on their ego than they are focused on accuracy. They're more focused on the ego than they are on the outcome. So if we're focused on the outcome, then I can say, okay, that's a good point. I still disagree, but what you just said is a good point. So let's figure out how we can work from there. See, when we're focused on accuracy, you can do that. When you're focused on ego, you don't have the ability to do it because your blinders are on and you're only focused on proving yourself right. Most people, when they dig in their heels on a certain subject, they are so deeply invested into being right rather than being accurate that they don't have the ability to think logically, which means, hey, that's a good point. All right. Even if you don't have all the information, people will have 10% of the information and argue about a subject in which 90% of the information they don't even know, but they'll sit there and argue. All right. So when you notice people or a person who does this, your best bet is to not bother engaging with them because it's not really going to get anywhere. Unless you want to get in an argument. Now, if you're looking for an argument, then engage with them because they will oblige. They'll give you exactly what you're looking for. And these people often are not and cannot engage in good faith. Well, first of all, you can't engage in good faith if you don't really have much information. You only have a little tiny piece. You're just going off the little bit that you know. And that's often is an interesting thing. That's often the case these days. And think about it. Why would people have so little information these days when we have access to more information than ever? All of you listening to this, your grandparents, they would go their entire lives, 60, 80, 100 years, and not have access to as much information as you and I have access to literally at our fingertips within the next 5 minutes. We can access so much information these days, yet people seem to be more ignorant. Ignorant simply means to not know things, and less intelligent and less nuanced in their discussion than ever before. How is that possible? Wasn't it supposed to be that once we got access to all this information, everybody would just become super smart? So what happened? What happened is human nature happened. It is always happening, is that we take it for granted that we have access to the information. Therefore, we don't consume it. This is the reason why people don't read, even though there's plenty of things to read available online. This is the reason why people don't know stuff, even though there's plenty of podcasts and YouTube videos, and ChatGPT can give you pretty much any information that you want, whether it's accurate or not. Many people simply don't consume it because we take for granted that we have immediate access to it. So when you see that you have it, you're like, all right, I can access that anytime. I can get to it anytime. The problem is anytime never happens. So ignorance is at an all-time high, even though information access is at an all-time high, and ignorance at an all-time high at the same time. Interesting thing, right? This is quite ironic. And the reason is, again, because we just take the stuff for granted. So someone to have an engagement in good faith means they are actually open to changing their minds. And the only way you can change another person's mind is if they are more focused on accuracy than they are on ego. Problem is you can't make another person think this way. So this is why I highly recommend that you not try to change another person's mind. All right, don't do it. That's not a business to get in. I am not in the mind changing business. So if someone disagrees with me on a point, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'll still make my point and I'll explain why I have my point, but I don't have the goal of getting you to think differently than how you think. All right, trying to get another person to change their mind is an exercise in futility. Any of you who has ever tried it, you can co-sign what I just said. I don't think there's anyone listening to me right now who has ever successfully changed another person's mind if that person didn't want to change their mind. Now, if they wanted to, that's a different story. But I I've never seen it happen. I've never seen a person get their mind changed unless they actually wanted to change their mind. And you can't put that in another person. You can plant the seed, but you can't give it sun. You can't give it water. You can't germinate the seed. People have to do that on their own. This is why I tell you, don't try to change another person. So if you know somebody they're doing the wrong things and you want them to start doing these other things, you can influence them and you can be an example. You can show them how they can do better. But until they decide they want to do better, nothing you say is going to make them change. So I would suggest you go preach to the choir and don't preach to the heathens. That's the metaphor that I like to give. So if you work at a church, for example, and you're a church pastor, preach to the people who actually come to church and want to hear what you have to say. Don't go outside of the church around the corner and go try to preach to the people standing on the corner. All right, they see the church. If they want to come in, they'll come in. If they haven't come in, there's a reason why they didn't come in. So don't try to convince them to do something that they clearly are not interested in doing. Moving on to point number 6. Today's topic, once again, this is my last point, then I'll recap and I'll take questions. How to lose friends and influence people. These are common communication mistakes that you may be making. Number 6, not allowing another person to be wrong. Now, wrong is generally, the way people use it these days is generally it's subjective. So someone says, Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James. Another person jumps in and says, well, no, you're wrong. LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. That's subjective. It's an opinion. So someone can be wrong factually, but most of the time when people are talking about wrong, they're often talking about opinions. So you just have the wrong opinion. You have this you have this view, you have this perspective. I'm right, you're wrong. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. It's impossible to have a wrong opinion. Now, someone can have an opinion that is based on faulty information or inaccurate information or bad facts or bad data. Your opinion can be based on wrong information, but the opinion itself cannot be wrong. There's no such thing as a wrong opinion. There is such thing as wrong information, or usually we call it inaccurate information. Is a better way of saying it because accuracy matters on those subjects. But there's no such thing as someone having a wrong opinion, which means here's the mistake you got to watch out for. If someone has an opinion that you disagree with, you must respect their right to have that opinion. All right, you must respect their right to have an opinion that you disagree with. In the United States of America, that's where I'm broadcasting from, the First Amendment defends everyone's right to free speech, which means people can say pretty much whatever they want. You can pretty much say whatever you want. If you want to support this candidate or that candidate, if you feel this way or that way about gender, you feel this way or that way about childbirth and choice or life, you can say whatever you want. People have whatever opinion they want. And even if you strongly disagree with another person's opinion, you should defend their right to have that opinion. Here's where the critical thinker in you and the maturity in you come out, or the lack thereof shows. Here's what I mean. Let's say you have a very strong opinion on pro-life versus pro-choice. All right, maybe some of you listening do. You have a very strong opinion on it, and you're strongly on one side of the conversation. If someone else is on the other side of the conversation, you should never, ever support anything that would silence them from using their voice and saying what they think, even if it's opposite of what you think. You should be defending their right to say it, because the First Amendment says everyone has the right to say what they want to say, because that same sword could be used against you in a different situation. So you shouldn't ever be okay with silencing someone for saying something just because you disagree with it. A few years ago, I'll be careful how I word this because TikTok might give me a warning. But a few years ago, there was a sickness going around. I'm not even going to say the word. It was a sickness going around about 4 years ago. Y'all all know what it was. And there was a solution to that sickness going around. Everybody was taking a little jab in the arm. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And on many platforms, TikTok being one of them, Facebook being another one, YouTube being another one, if you put out material that went against the idea of taking that shot into your arm, then you would they might demonetize your stuff. They might, you might get your account deleted. They might not let you run ads on your platform, or they would just suppress the showing of your material. So people wouldn't even know that you put it out there. They wouldn't let all your audience see it. They wouldn't show it on the browse pages simply because you had a quote unquote wrong opinion. And the platforms were doing this. This wasn't individual people. The platforms were doing this. And there were people out there who call themselves critical thinkers, who call themselves intelligent, who call themselves informed, who were co-signing this. Like, yeah, we should silence these people, not let them talk, not let them say anything. And the United States government, they put out a document. And this guy named Alex Sharfin, he put out an email. Actually, he put out an episode on his show, and he was talking about this, that the government put out a PDF document. I don't know if any of you know about this. It was called the Disinformation Dozen. It's called the Disinformation Dozen, and it named 12 people who have been really loud and really strongly going against the conversation around that virus and around the solutions to the virus and around the shots that you're supposed to take. They were going strong. So these are people like with maybe people in politics, just people who are well known, or people who had like a podcast or a YouTube channel, something like that. It was 12 specific people, and it named each person, had a little picture of them. It said what their platform was, and it shared in the document. This is by the United States government. It shared what about them, what they were saying that the government considered to be quote unquote disinformation. All it was someone disagreeing with what the accepted party line was. That's all it was. It was just people saying, well, the government saying do this, and we say no. The doctors are saying you should do this, and we're saying no, we shouldn't do that. And people are saying this is safe and it's going to be helpful. We're saying no, it's not safe and it's not helpful. They were just basically arguing with each other over what is accurate and what is not, which is basically what science is. Science is an ongoing conversation about what's true and what's not. But during that period, when that virus was out there, I wasn't supposed to say that word, when that sickness was out there, what happened? You had the government and doctors saying, well, we got to follow science. Well, let's understand what science is. Science is an ongoing conversation about what's true and what's not. And there should be an ongoing debate about, or is this true, is it not? And that's why we had a scientific method to test out hypotheses. But when what came out during that time, during that sickness, they came out with a solution, that thing you were supposed to go take in your arm and all the boosters and all that. Y'all remember all that. And they said, don't question this. Don't ask any questions. Don't challenge this. Don't go against this. Just listen to what we say and do exactly what we say. That's not how science works. Science means there's a theory, a hypothesis, you test it, you have a control, you have a variable, and we find out what's true, and it changes. What was true 50 years ago may not be true anymore. That's how accurate, when we're trying to find accuracy, that's how debates happen. But what science, quote unquote, or the government was telling us was that, oh, well, just accept what we said. And someone said, don't forget about the mask. Yes, the lockdowns. Yes, the separations, staying 6 feet apart from each other, the social distancing, all of that stuff. What was all that? That was people saying, do not debate, do not question, just listen to everything that we say. And if you question it, you're wrong. I'm telling you that this is a way you want to make sure you don't do this. And I think we all can agree that the government was, let's just say, inaccurate about all of that stuff. I don't care whether you wore the mask, took the shot, how many shots you took or not. We can generally say they were inaccurate in what they said. And also the Center for Disease Control, I think we can agree they were inaccurate in what they were prescribing. And again, it doesn't make you bad for taking it if you took it or wearing a mask if you wore it. But we can agree that the things that they were saying were absolutes were absolutely not absolutes. They were proven to be wrong. And has anyone from the government come out and said, hey, our bad, we're sorry about that? Anybody said that? I didn't catch it. If they did, I didn't hear it. So maybe some of you heard it, but I didn't. The whole point here is, let's go back to you individually. So when I say wrong, I'm saying it in air quotes, because people have a right to be wrong. And I mean this metaphorically more than literally. So the only way someone can be really wrong is if they have a factual point that is inaccurate, not an opinion. Again, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. So if someone's opinion differs from yours, they have a right to that opinion. Your opinion, your perspective, your moral judgment is no more right or wrong than anyone else's. And again, this is where your humility needs to come in. Your opinion, perspective, or way of viewing things is no more right than anyone else's, even if you have 100 reasons why you believe it. If I think Michael Jordan's better than LeBron James, I could write a whole book as to why. That doesn't mean that you are wrong if you think Kobe is better than both of them, or you think LeBron's better than Jordan, or you think Bill Russell or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is better than all of them. All right, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion, and we can debate the opinions if we want to. But you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. We just have difference of opinion, which is okay. If we all had the same opinion, then we wouldn't need humans. We would just have robots, because robots are more effective and more efficient rather than human beings are. So if we all had the same opinion, that'd be a problem. We would get eliminated within the next 10 years as fast as artificial intelligence is moving right now. So you should be happy when someone has a different opinion from you and they can defend it. You're not upset. You should be happy and engage with them. And maybe you might run into an intelligent person every now and then. I wouldn't bet on it, but every now and then. And I'm going to take questions in one moment. Let me get through the rest of this point. So you should allow another person to have a different perspective, even when you vehemently disagree. And next person who's able to convince someone else to change their mind via argument will be the first in history who's ever done it. Okay, let me say that last point one more time. The next person who is able to change another person's mind via argument, you will be the first person in history who has ever done so successfully. So I'm saying that to remind you, do not try to change another person's mind by arguing with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't argue, because again, argument is healthy when both people are standing on their points and we're going back and forth and let's see what you think, let's see what I think. Maybe I'll learn something in the conversation. I won't change your mind. You're not going to change my mind, but I might learn something. Okay, I understand why you're saying it because I see that perspective and I see the way you worded that. That makes sense. Didn't change my mind, but I understand why you said it. And I might not change your mind, but you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. We will walk away still on different sides of the table, but I learned something in the exchange. You learned something in the exchange. So some people call that agreeing to disagree. And technically, yes, but agree to disagree is kind of like a cop-out, I think. People can disagree on a subject, but we can still engage and talk about it. Why do you think what you think? Why do I think what I think? And again, once I understand why you think what you think, I can better formulate an argument against it and vice versa. When I understand why you have your position, let's say you think LeBron's better than Jordan, and I will engage with you on that, even though I'm not going to change my mind because I think Jordan's better than LeBron. The more I hear you talk about it, I may understand what your perspective is. Maybe you think that because you're like 25 and you never even saw Michael Jordan, you only know LeBron James. Maybe you think that because you're factoring in social media and Michael Jordan ain't on social media. So now I understand why you're saying it. It gives me a better understanding of your perspective, even though it did not change my conclusion. You understand? So this is, again, when you are able to be humble, and I don't use that word. I don't throw that word humble out too often. I think people overuse it. But when you're able to be humble enough to respect what somebody else has to say, you can learn things in the conversation. And learning does not necessarily mean changing your opinion or your conclusion. All that said, let me recap my points. You got a question or comment, put it in there right now, address it in a second. We're talking about communication mistakes to never make. Number one, failing to listen. This is the most common one. Many people simply don't listen. So you want to separate yourself from most people, just become a much better listener. Number two, getting into battles of semantics over directional meaning. Again, if you have a 5-year-old and they're trying to make a point, they may not be great at putting it into words, but you still try to understand them, right? Treat adults the same way. Number three, ask for a point, then move the goalposts. All right, this is usually what people do when they're just trying to argue. Make sure you don't fall into the trap. Number four, using sarcasm and insults as deflections in a conversation. Don't do this unless you're trying to argue with a person or you're trying to make them never like you or make them hate you. Then you can use sarcasm and insults. Otherwise, you're trying to make friends with someone. Do not insult them and don't use sarcasm. Number five, unwillingness to acknowledge a solid point. Even if you disagree with another person, you can acknowledge when they made a good point. Again, it is impossible that everybody on your side is a genius and everybody on the other side is an idiot. That's not possible. If you have come to believe that, perish the thought. Number six, not allowing another person to be wrong. Other people can have whatever opinion they want, just like you can. They may think you're wrong. You may think that they're wrong, and everybody is allowed to be wrong. The First Amendment protects free speech and gives everyone a right to think whatever they want to think, even if you vehemently disagree with their perspective. All that said, let me take comments and questions. You got one, put it in the comment section right now. I saw several come through while I was talking, so let's get it. Harper over on YouTube said something about Kid Rock. I don't think he's not referring to the topic here. Let's see what we got on TikTok. Then we'll go to Instagram. You got a comment on IG. Go ahead and post it. I'll get to it in 1 second, maybe a few seconds. Let me see what's on TikTok first. Appreciate you, Yellow Man Reed, as usual, coming through with the gifts and the lightning bolts. I don't even know what those things mean, but I appreciate you doing it. Chocolate Diva, what's going on? Good morning to you. J Dash said, where kids at? What kids? I got a kid, but I don't know if you're talking about mine. Let's see. Someone said you and your boxes and no, I wear a full suit. Someone said Candace Owens. I don't know what you're referring to. Chris Voss. Yeah, Chris Voss is good. Chris Voss was a FBI, I think FBI hostage negotiator. Yeah, he's a good example as well. How to restore headlight says active listening is tactical empathy. Yes, correct. Good phrasing there. Yes, correct. Iron Horse Cowboy, good morning. Alexander 8875, I've been saying this for the longer. It amazes me how people don't realize this. Well, people tend to not read or listen. I mean, this is actually kind of what I've been talking about here today. Thea said, debate with facts, no need to argue. Well, people can have facts and still argue. So Thea in C2, I'm glad you made this point here, because here's the thing you got to understand about facts is that facts can be handpicked. So when someone says that they have facts, that doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is completely accurate, because we can pick and choose facts. What you cannot pick and choose is truth. Now, truth is a higher level than facts. Let me give you an example. Is it a fact that there was a virus back 4 or 5 years ago? Is it a fact? Yes. Is it a fact that there was a solution that was derived for it that you could take a jab in your arm? Yes. Is it a fact that there are a bunch of people who took a bunch of those shots and they're completely healthy to this very day? Yes, those are all facts. Is it a fact that there are people who didn't take the shot that ended up getting really sick? Yes. Is it a fact that there are some people who died of that virus? Yes. All of those things are facts. Does that mean everything that medicine says about what you should do about it is true? No, because there are a whole bunch of other facts that I didn't mention. So you got to be careful when people are throwing around the word facts, because people can use facts to deceive you. And there's a couple concepts about it. First of all, I call it lying with facts. You can lie to people with facts, because you can just pick the ones that serve your argument and ignore the ones that don't serve your argument. So be very careful when people throw that word out there, fact. Either you're doing it, I'm not saying you personally, but if you do it, be careful. And when other people do it, you got to be careful, because people can, that's a verbal sleight of hand when people say that they have facts. And also, there's a book out there called How to Lie with Statistics. So any of you who's never read that book, go look it up. It's not a very long book. It's called How to Lie with Statistics, and it's how people can use data to basically tell you any story that they want. So if a politician wants to tell you that crime is down, any politician at any time in life can tell you that crime is down, because all they got to do is pick the right statistics to show you and ignore the ones that show you crime is up and just show you the ones that show you crime is down. So the acts, let's say murders by stabbing in one county in the state of Oklahoma is down 80% since this time last year. So is crime down? Yes. But they didn't tell you that shootings in Brooklyn, New York are up 80% since this time last year. So I can just pick whichever stat I want. Both of them are facts, and either one can say crime is down or crime is up. So you got to be very careful when people are throwing out the word facts. That is, people can use that to deceive. I don't think everyone uses it to deceive, but people use it to deceive, and they also use it that way because they don't understand the context. If you really want to tell someone the whole story, you got to tell them the truth. The truth means all the facts in full context. The problem with all the facts in full context, i.e. the truth, is that it takes a lot of time to gather and it takes a lot of time to understand. And most people have very short attention spans for anything outside of what they already want to believe. Therefore, it's hard to tell people the truth because people don't have the capacity to receive it. This is, again, look at politicians. Politicians are professional liars, all of them. I don't care what side you're on. Republican, Democrat, they all lie. You cannot be a politician in America without lying. It's impossible. So anyway, they lie by telling you the facts they want you to know, and they ignore the facts they don't want you to know. All right, that's how they lie. That is lying. If you tell someone a fact but ignore another fact, you're lying. It's called lie by omission. I appreciate that, Yellow Man Reed. Rich says, I just hear what was one of the valuable pieces of advice today. Well, I think you just heard it while I was talking. Great morning, Rich. Appreciate you being here. Let's see. All right, let's see what we got on Instagram. I saw a bunch of comments on IG. Let's see what we got. We're talking here today about communication mistakes to not make. Legend 23 KM says people fail to understand the key component to being a pro athlete isn't just skills for the sport, but using soft skills with coaches and GMs. Yeah, depending on your situation. That's not for every player. I mean, if you're a superstar player, you don't really need those soft skills. As long as you can play, that's enough. But players who are kind of on the fringes and trying to get in, yes, you're correct. So, yes, you're correct on that. If you're a guy at the end of the bench, you could be easily replaced by somebody else who could take your spot. But if you're a superstar, you don't really need, if you're Allen Iverson, you don't need soft skills. Now, if you're a guy at the end of the bench, you do need them. So it depends on who you are and your leverage. Someone said X can be a very disrespectful place. Well, the people on X, Legend 23 KM, the app itself is not disrespectful. The people who use it are disrespectful. So just like Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any app can be disrespectful depending on who you're talking to. So it depends on how you're using it. So it's not the app itself. So we can't blame the app. So this is another thing that I'm glad you brought this up, because a lot of people say, well, discourse in the world got worse because of social media. And I mentioned social media, but who is social media? Facebook doesn't post on Facebook. People post on Facebook. So we got to blame the people. It's not the app. It's the people on the app. Because every social media app is driven by what? User-generated content. So that's me and you. That's us. So if you think an app is a bad place for conversation, well, you're talking about human beings. We're not talking about the app. Facebook didn't do anything. All they did was provide a platform for us to talk to each other. So if the discourse is toxic, that's because people are toxic. That's not the app. So we got to be, again, let's not blame the apps. We got to blame ourselves. We're the ones out there doing it. Someone said, the worst thing I saw on X is someone with no profile picture saying that the clan is base. Well, Legend 23, you can't go reacting to stuff like that. I mentioned that social media is anonymous. People say things sometimes just to stir up reaction. So clearly, whatever they did, it worked on you. You remembered it. Someone said, hecklers pre-Caitlin Clark refused to Google the woman of the game and was still asked who was seeing the pick of Sue Bird for laughs. Well, again, if you just want to react to stuff, social media will provide you plenty of material. Brandon says it's scary when you have those people on the trains or outside screaming that they're going to hell for not believing in Jesus. They definitely don't want to preach to the choir. I know what you mean. You see the people on the train and stuff. They got a right to that. They have a right to that opinion. And we should all defend their right to saying what they want to say, because again, everybody, if all you heard in life was just people who agreed with you, life would be pretty boring. Even though most people think that's what they want to hear. But actually, I like hearing people who disagree with me because I want to know why they think what they think. And I might be open-minded to the subject to where I might change my opinion. And another thing while I'm on the subject, folks, if you have the same opinions now in 2024 that you had in 2019, you have a problem. All right, some of your opinions should be changing. Opinions are flexible. Your principles are not flexible, but your opinions should all be flexible. Every opinion you hold today, you should be willing to change it, given new information, new experiences. Let's see. Legend says, my family got angry at me for never taking the medication. Yeah, I mean, that happened because a lot of people were, indoctrinated into you must take it, and if you don't, it's going to be terrible. The White House put out a statement that says it's going to be a winter of death and destruction for people who don't take the shot. And that ended up being incorrect, but the same administration is in there. Nobody ever apologized for that. Miss Trina 911 said, I've been watching your need to apply what you've been telling me all these years. Well, what you should do, Miss Trina, is go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's what you should do to address what you said there, to apply what I've been telling you. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Let's see. Someone said, Legend 23, you got a lot to say here. You said, I graduated from college last May, hoop for school, want to play pro. I grew up watching YouTube. Can I use you as a reference for what? Connection for overseas hoops. Get my book. I got a book called The Overseas Basketball Blueprint. I got 4 books about playing basketball overseas, Legend 23. Go to balloverseas.com. Balloverseas.com. Or you can send me a DM, and my assistant watches my DM. She will send you the link. Balloverseas.com. I got a book called The Overseas Basketball Blueprint. It tells you exactly what steps you need to take to go play overseas. And we got 3 other books. We got one about agents, one about exposure camps, one about the business side of basketball. You can get all 4 of those in a bundle. Just go to balloverseas.com. So let me see what else we got. Okay, so workonyourgameuniversity.com. Any of you would like to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. Like Miss Trina says, she needs to start applying these things she's been hearing from me. Any of you got the same idea that you need to start applying these things that you heard, and you want some strategic help, mindset help, and systemization help in applying this stuff to your real life? Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's where you can get direct access to me. That's the only place you get direct access to me besides consuming this content that I put out. If you like these lives, I do these every weekday, Monday through Friday, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern. So if you like this, be here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And if you're already following me on whatever app you're on, you see we post plenty of stuff, clips, posts, etc. on these apps. Y'all know what it is. Work on Your Game University. That's where I'll be for the rest of the day. Everybody have a great Monday. I'll see y'all tomorrow. We out here. Wes over on YouTube said, how do I feel about Bronny James? I feel like he's a pro yet. We don't know yet. We got to see. He got to get some time to actually play. I don't count preseason. All right. See y'all tomorrow. We out.